The following movie hasn't been made or released yet. There's no way you've seen this film, so you might want to build a time machine and see this movie before watching this review. The oddest thing happened to me the other day. I'm sitting in my studio writing a review for Captain America: The First Avenger when a blue box making a noise that sounds like a cross between a rusty hamster wheel and a seal giving birth shows up whilst busting out several of my ceiling tiles. Out walks a man wearing a question mark jacket who turns out not to be the Riddler. The color scheme was all wrong, so I knew that immediately, but a man who addresses himself only as the Doctor. He tells me this is my lucky day. He's looking for a new traveling companion, and he wants to know if I'll agree to come with him. He says we can go anywhere I'd like in time and space. Well, having the one-track mind that I do, the very first thing that sprang to mind was not going back to 1966 to see a taping of Star Trek the Original Series, or to see the look on Frank Gorshin's face when he meets this weirdo, or back to see Steve Ditko draw his first Spider-Man, or even to see the first viewing of a Max Fleischer Superman cartoon, or to find out what really happened to George Reeves. No, the first place I thought to go, out of all the myriad possibilities, was forward just 2 years to see Ben Affleck play Batman in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel sequel. Now, I'm sure you're saying to yourself, how could you waste such a monumental, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see an impending movie that's effectively just around the corner? But that's just it. It was a brilliant opportunity to do something no one else has or will probably ever get to do. Review a movie before it even gets made. Such a feat I was certain would put Geekvolution on the map more prominently than ever before. What's the most surefire way to make a video go viral than to tell every fanboy what they're most dying to know? Is Ben Affleck any good as Batman? Does Superman keep killing people? Does every single member of the Justice League have a cameo? How Frank Miller is this thing really? Is Kevin Smith overselling the new Batsuit? And will we see even more explosive rage from Mark Waid? It's the ultimate spoiler, the mother of all early leaks, the holy grail of bean spillage. I, Captain Logan, am going to change the internet forever by delivering history's first temporally premature movie review. Now, don't be alarmed for fear of paradox or mortifying, history-altering breaches of ethics. Remember that if the Doctor is involved, we must be in a fixed timeline. If I can do this, it's because I always did it. Destiny is in play now, and I, ladies and gentlemen, am off the hook. So if you're wondering how the man who refuses to analyze new movies until they've been out at least 2 years and who is constantly concerned with how rampant viral marketing, lengthy trailers, and early spoilers from all those lucky Brits who get to see everything awesome made in America before us Americans do, has the Constitution to ruin arguably one of the most anticipated and controversial superhero movie projects in history, motivated solely by greed and nothing else, well, fate has intervened, and I am but a puppet of the universe, whose strings are being pulled to propel history forward in a way that only the celestial powers that be can truly influence. I am their instrument, and this is their beautiful, fabulous, view-generating song. Before you judge me, just ask yourself, would you not have made precisely the same decision had you been in my place? No, of course you wouldn't have. You would have gone to see Star Wars Episode 7 instead. Dang it, why didn't I think of that until just now? So, if you don't want to know anything about this movie, don't go any farther. If you've gotten this far, I know your curiosity has already gotten the better of you and you won't be able to help yourself. But you have been warned. Past this point, future history is out of our hands. I will not be held responsible for the no doubt profoundly altered direction the path of your life will take once you have heard what I am about to reveal. Unfortunately, I won't be able to show screenshots like I usually do, because I couldn't take any pictures of the screen without getting caught. So I'm just going to use shots from other Batman and Superman movies, and you can use your imagination. Though, if I had managed to get screen grabs of an official Warner Brothers property that hasn't been made yet, I wonder if YouTube could still flag it for copyright. The first thing I'd like to talk about, and this won't be a big shock to probably anyone, is the title. Batman vs. Superman was just a working title and ultimately wasn't what the filmmakers decided to go with. As we all know, it's incredibly taboo now to put any main character's name in the title of a DC superhero movie these days. We should have all known better than to think Superman or Batman's names would actually show up on the marquee. Everybody knows that half the success of The Dark Knight was because the word Batman wasn't on the posters. The title of Zack Snyder's Man of Steel sequel is The Man of Steel Returns on a Dark Knight. Yeah, I know, it doesn't really make any sense, does it? It thinks it's a clever play on words, but when you spell night that way, it just sounds stupid. I guess they thought Man of Steel still had to be in the title for the same logic that Mark Webb and his crew had with The Amazing Spider-Man 2. They probably didn't want to confuse anybody into thinking it was another reboot. And yeah, Nolan used Dark Knight before, but by this point, everybody's so used to Batman being called that, half of the idiot, snot-nosed, nacho-wolfing public probably doesn't even remember he's called Batman anymore. And they had to get the word returns in there to capitalize on the Frank Miller influence, but they were afraid it might seem too obvious if they put it after Dark Knight, so they slyly threw it in after Man of Steel. Now you might think that marketing logic sounds ridiculous, but it beat the Avengers record opening weekend by a wide margin. Age of Ultron didn't even get close. Of course, it still couldn't quite reach Episode 7 numbers. God, I am such an idiot for not going to that. Have you read The Dark Knight Returns? Well then, you've seen one scene in this movie. There's one huge obligatory knockdown drag-out fight between Batman and Superman, and it's shot nearly frame for frame from the scene in that graphic novel. Even the color palette and editing style and costumes totally change, almost as if the scene belongs in some other movie. I'm not entirely convinced Batman and Superman weren't played by different actors for that scene, or maybe they're totally CGI to make their muscles bulge and ripple and look like they're way stockier than anybody could possibly be. It's really intrusive and sensational and just there for fan service. There's an after-credit scene that reveals that it isn't actually part of the movie, but really just Bruce and Clark in a movie theater sipping on cokes and watching a stylized movie based on their adventures, but it's so long and out of nowhere that the damage is already done way before you finally know that. I don't know why that scene couldn't just be in the freaking movie. What were they thinking? Batman and Superman do have a somewhat antagonistic relationship at first, but they each go through a profound character arc by learning what positive qualities each respectively has that the other is lacking. Superman doesn't like Batman for the classic reasons. He dresses up like a bat and scares people, uses fear as an intimidator, and is willing to cross lawful and ethical boundaries short of killing people to achieve his goals. And Batman doesn't like Superman because he's actually killed someone to achieve his goals. So Superman doesn't support Batman because he acts kinda dark, and Batman doesn't support Superman because he is kinda dark. Superman teaches Batman the value of smiling a lot, keeping up appearances, and giving really short but inspiring sounding speeches. And Batman teaches Superman how not to destroy public property and the concept of monetary damage. The weirdest thing ever happens in the final scene. They ultimately settle their differences and, as they see it, make the world a better place by trading alter egos and costumes. And it's oddly, incredibly satisfying, as all the way through the movie, I can't help but think that Clark is more like Batman and Bruce is more like Superman. At the end, Bruce is Superman and everybody loves and trusts him in a way they never did with the actual Superman. The new Batsuit is pretty cool, and unlike anything we've ever seen realized on screen. Actually, all 5 of them are. Batman has a suit for every situation. His main one looks just like the Neil Adams costume, and actually has Neil Adams' signature in huge lettering all the way down the left boot, which Neil Adams insisted upon when he found out that was the design they were going for. But Batman also uses a different suit for every environment. He has a space suit, a hang-gliding suit, a rappelling suit, and a spelunking suit. The obscure Batman Begins references abound in this film. One of the things I found really distracting all the way through is all the Batman history the movie has to catch us up on. I really appreciate not having to sit through a Batman origin on top of the new umpteenth Superman origin we just had, but now we're on the opposite extreme. We've got an older Batman, so he's got a lot of history under his belt. The movie can't help itself but to constantly give fans little tidbits of history to make them giddy. But it's all topsy-turvy from what we're used to, so it's often both inconsequential and irrelevant. Batman's had 4 Robins friends by this point, and he fights alone now because 2 of them are dead, one's been institutionalized, and the first one is now a chick named Nightwing who's been reduced to a costume juggler and works kids' birthday parties. Batgirl is a woman named Vicky Vale who got shot by the Joker, became a paraplegic, and retired to pursue a career in journalism. And the entire police department, including Jim Gordon, Renee Montoya, and Chief O'Hara, knows he's Batman, but he still somehow manages to remain an urban legend. Bruce does have another ward named Terry McGinnis, who he refuses to tell he's Batman and who thinks he's the dullest rich person on the planet. They're clearly setting him up to take the mantle when Ben Affleck gets too old to play the part, before they even have a chance to make a Batman solo film. Nice to see they're thinking ahead. Oh, and the only screen time Terry McGinnis really gets is feeding Ace the Bat Hound. This version of Batman is a lot more of a detective than we've ever seen a live action before, which is a welcome return to form, going all the way to having him hold a flashlight in his mouth when he's breaking and entering and searching for clues. The only problem is that what is ostensibly the B mystery plot, which brings Bruce to Metropolis, involves a murdered prostitute and the framing of a guy played by Coolio, with Batman trying to get him off by getting to the bottom of who really murdered the girl. The whole thing is lifted almost verbatim from the Daredevil director's cut. Apparently David Goyer was completely out of ideas and just hoped nobody saw that untheatrical version and wouldn't notice. That murder ends up leading Batman to a huge criminal underworld with none other than Lex Luthor at its center. Lex, who is portrayed as being Batman and Superman all rolled up into one, except better at absolutely everything, especially public relations and not blowing up stuff. Jesse Eisenberg, who's barely recognizable under the bushy red hair and beard, plays a hot-headed but charismatic internet tycoon who's made his fortune with a social network called Lexbook, and he ingeniously manages to reverse engineer it to uncover the secret identities of both Batman and Superman. But thanks to a magical Kryptonian artifact that was the only relic to survive the events of Man of Steel, Superman erases his memory at the end, and he forgets not only this film, but the entire last 10 years of his life. But Lex is wearing a black glove at a press conference at the end to let us know he's still evil. A whole lot of this feels really derivative, but I just can't put my finger on it. Wonder Woman is indeed in the film, as previously reported, but she just shows up for a brief and barely explained cameo in which she gives Batman an invisible Batmobile. That must have been a cost cutter. Never fear, though, because lots more visible Batman vehicles are shoehorned into the film. There's a Batcopter, a Batboat, a Bat hovercraft, and even the Whirly Bat makes an appearance. Snyder's going out of his way to address criticisms of his first film by trying to lighten the mood a bit. It's still incredibly self-important in its tone, but it tries to deflate that with a lot of stupid and out-of-character stuff, including parachute shooting out the back of the aforementioned invisible Batmobile, and Superman taking Lex to jail at the end, wrapped up in a big plastic S. Not to mention that there's a bat signal in Metropolis and a Superman signal in Gotham, split-screened with both characters wearing the wrong costumes, triumphantly standing atop skyscrapers before the closing credits. Also, more of the Justice League, pre-becoming superheroes, are shoehorned in stupid, cutesy ways. Barry Allen shows up to do forensics on the dead prostitute, and Hal Jordan is a retired Air Force pilot who flies Lex's private jet. There are also silly cameos, like Christian Bale as the CEO of Wayne Enterprises' rival company, Derek Powers, and Brandon Routh plays the real Jimmy Olsen, who gets his sister Jenny fired for being incompetent and constantly in danger. Oh, and there's a second after-credit scene where Brainiac makes contact with Lex Luthor, planning to break him out of prison and take over the world via Lexbook. He's voiced by Norm Macdonald. You know, just as I was about to rate this movie, I realized why the Doctor must have sent me to the future. As soon as anyone from Warner Brothers gets wind that the entire plot of the movie they're making has been leaked, they're going to rewrite the whole thing. What I just described will probably never get made now. I haven't just changed your future by describing this film. I've changed the future of the film itself. This wasn't about me getting some fantastic cosmic break. This was about making a better future. It's like Back to the Future 2. Now that we know what's coming, we can avoid it. And I've made it so that Warner Brothers will have to avoid making this movie. But when 2016 rolls around, I won't be able to prove any of this. This whole video will be dismissed as an elaborately conceived hoax with an unlikely, poorly realized fake plot and ridiculous predictions, none of which ultimately came to fruition. You can't tell me it didn't happen. It happened. I was there. But maybe now we'll get a better film. And I'll rest easy knowing I did something positive for the future of comic book movies. Well, thanks a lot, the Doctor. I guess we all owe you one.
Ba, ba.